I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for May the 26th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the thought pressure are mine alone, and in making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we have two systems active across the tropics today, all in the eastern hemisphere. We've got tropical storm Remal here in the northern Bay of Bengal, coming up towards the coast of India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, and will make landfall here in the next day or so. And we also have tropical storm Aghon here, as named by Pegasa, not named yet by the Japan Meteorological Agency. But that system is moving over the central Philippines and moving into portions of Luzon as the sun rises over the region. We're going to start off here with Tropical Storm Remal here, and this system has slowly gotten its act together throughout the Bay of Bengal. We talked about a few days ago how the system was very broad overall, and I'll go back to this view, where we had just a ton of disorganized thunderstorm activity firing across the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. And what we really were going to watch for is when the convection got more organized and concentrated into one area of low pressure. And that has happened. It took quite a while, which is something to expect with a more broad low, but it has happened, and we now have a tropical storm here with convection more focused on an area of low pressure somewhere there in the northern Bay of Bengal. And you can see that here on an ASCAP pass we got several hours ago, showing a little bit of a broad low, but closed and well defined, and given the convection that has been sustaining on the south side, this is a tropical cyclone by definition. And one thing that I've noticed that we're seeing now compared to even earlier last night was that the convection is now wrapping onto the north side. You can see if the low is here, we now have convection wrapping around on the north side, where if in this ASCAT pass you can see from last night, here's the convection on the south side, but the north side's very void of any convection. And really, this was what the system needed to continue on with its intensification, as this is now concentrating an area of thunderstorms surrounding the low, and this can allow wind increases to occur and pressure falls within the center. Now, there will be a couple of limiting factors. Now, wind shear is fairly low in this region. You can see we have a very divergent flow, which you can see in these upper level clouds moving away in a clockwise manner. And this basically just shows us there's no big features here. There's no big trough. There's no strong ridge shearing the system apart in any big way. But the limiting factors is one itself. It's very broad. You can see just how broad the low is here. And these larger systems tend to be slower with intensifying compared to, say, smaller storms like Aghon in the West Pacific. The other limiting factor is just time. The system is already here, not too far offshore of India and Bangladesh, and we're expecting landfall within the next day or so. And this system, by, say, Monday morning or Monday afternoon local time, will likely be inland. And once that happens, that's really it for intensification. But impacts are still going to be significant whether or not it intensifies at all here. As you can see, we have a lot of deep convection firing around this low, and this is going to contribute to a lot of heavy rainfall across the region. This is the GFS ensemble map showing precipitation potential throughout really the entire northern Indian Ocean, but you can see here where I circled there, that's where the storm is tracking. So it's here now and it's tracking like this. And you can see the expanse of heavy rainfall that is going to spread over a wide region here, even far away from the center. If the center makes landfall here in eastern India, we've got a ton of rainfall even here into southern Myanmar. And that could easily cause some flooding issues here in some of these areas, especially closer to, say, mountainous areas. I do want to show here the European, which maybe I feel like to be doing a bit better, showing the maximum potential rainfall, especially with some of the higher topography across this region. We could be looking at several hundred millimeters of rainfall. In fact, the European seems to, this is the ensemble, by the way, an average of, I believe, 30 or more members. So that's a very high confidence average from the European here, showing 400, 500 millimeters of rainfall or more than that. And that could absolutely lead to flooding issues. One other issue is that with the low spinning here, we've got all this onshore flow into some of these river deltas. And any rainfall that comes down here is going to go right down those river deltas. But of course, with that onshore flow, we may get a piling up of water from perhaps some ocean rise, but also the rainfall falling, and we could have flooding issues as well from that. Now, the system will weaken pretty quickly once it moves ashore, and we're not expecting it to be really around much more by, say, mid to late week. But for those in the path of the storm, make sure you're staying weather aware, and I'll leave links to local weather offices for Myanmar, Bangladesh, and India, so you can stay ahead of what's happening with the system. But we're not done in the tropics, as we have another system active in the West Pacific. We have Tropical Storm Aghon here over the central Philippines and now moving into Luzon. You can see the system centered right about here in southern portions of Luzon. Now, this is a bit further west than we talked about a few days ago. We talked about a few days ago how the storm was, when it was an invest down here, likely going to take a track somewhat like this, brushing the eastern coast of the central Philippines. Now, something that happened is that the area of high pressure that was steering it turned out to be a little bit stronger, so it had a little bit more of a westward push, and this pushed the storm a little bit more into the Philippines, and now we're sitting here with a track right over land. Now, the main thing that this has done is it's brought all the heavy rainfall right over the Philippines. Now, this is good news in some ways. A lot of these areas, especially in the central Philippines, did need this rainfall, but of course, don't want too much of a good thing, and we could have a lot of heavy rainfall here, especially in these steep convective bursts. You can see areas like here, here, and here where looks like it's bubbling like a boiling pot of water. That's deep convection, deep thunderstorms firing near the center of the storm, and those could easily drop a lot of rainfall in a short period of time, and that could easily lead to some flooding issues. Now, for the future forecast of this storm, the main thing that we're going to have to watch for is exactly how far east does it get now that it's turning towards the north. Right now, the area of high pressure is moving back towards the east, so we're now taking away more of that westward component and now having more of a southerly component here of the storm. And now this is turning the storm off towards the north. Now, the question is, where does it stay in terms of location relative to Luzon? Does it come out a little bit and maybe get a little bit of ocean time here east of Luzon, potentially allowing it to recover from the land interaction this morning and prep itself for the rapid intensification that we're probably going to see at least some form of as it races off towards the northeast east of Japan? Or do we see the system just stay over Luzon and we just get a lot of land interaction that could potentially disrupt the system's center as it does so? Now, I should mention for the Philippines and Luzon, either track is not going to change what happens. We're going to get heavy rainfall regardless, and we have Signal 1 warnings in place on up through portions of Luzon as a result of this. And by the time this video comes out, there will be a new Pagasa advisory, so I'm sure some of these will even be expanded further inland and further north. And I'll leave a link to Pagasa's website at the top of the description so you can get the latest bulletins from them. But for the forecast after the Philippines, this is a huge little roadblock for the system, and it's really just going to have to be a watch and wait thing for what the system does. Now, so far, the system has already done fairly well for itself. Now, one thing about the central Philippines is there is a lot of land and there's a lot of hydrography, but if a storm like this takes the right track, it can get itself a bit of time over water, and that can allow it to build itself up a little bit. And that seems to would have been what have happened here before the system made landfall this morning. This is a microwave pass from a few hours ago. A bit of a scary look right there. Maybe the system was trying to build an eye for itself before it made landfall. Now, this looks fairly strong. It's not nearly as strong as this would, as I'd say, normally depict in, say, a stronger typhoon. But this was an indication that the system was trying to get itself better organized, and it just ran into land this morning, and this will likely cause some disruption to it. But the question is, what does this look like when it comes offshore? Does it interact heavily with Luzon, and is this completely disrupted, or does it come offshore, and is it able to rebuild this from a decent starting point still coming offshore? and is that able to prep it to rapidly intensify. Now, I think we are likely to see some form of intensification after the system recurves away. This is the current forecast cone from Pegasa. You can see the system coming offshore on their forecast. They're keeping it offshore and then intensifying into a severe tropical storm. Interestingly, they don't make it a typhoon. I think the chances are decent here for a typhoon to come out of this, and I believe the Typhoon Warning Center does forecast this. In fact, I can check this on this map here. In fact, yes, they do forecast a typhoon out of this. And I'd say as long as the system stays offshore, that is a fairly good possibility here as the system goes northeast. Now, for impacts in Japan, the good news is the system will likely stay well east of you. You can see in this forecast cone from Agasa, the overall track keeps us well east of the southern Japanese islands, and even the western extent stays fairly east. Now, if it is, on this western extent, we could get a little bit more impacts. We could get a little bit more rainfall and wind. But right now, it doesn't look like it's going to be any significant hit. And even if it is further west, I don't think it's going to be a significant hit at all. Now, one limiting factor for the system when it does track northeast is the sea surface temperature gradient. It is still May, so the sea surface temperatures are not as far north as they would be in, say, August or September. So you can see that as the system tracks northeast, and it will be tracking fairly quickly, you can see there's a lot of strong southwesterly flow in the mid-latitudes. It will be tracking across this gradient fairly quickly. The 26-degree isotherm is right about there, and that's not a lot of real estate for the system here. And especially if it stays over Luzon, that can cause some trouble. But you can see the environment is favorable for this intensification. We have this upper trough here. This will also work in favor for Japan, keeping the system towards the east of you all. But you can see this jet interactions taking shape here, and this could lead to a pretty nice jet interaction storm, and one that's nice to look at meteorologically and on satellite as the system does recurve. But again, for the Philippines, heavy rainfall is going to continue. We have Signal 2 and Signal 1 warnings across much of the Philippines. And again, once this video comes out, there will likely be a new advisory from Pagasa, so make sure you're going to their website to get the latest bulletin information. That's all that I've got for today. Stay safe in all the areas being impacted by our storms, and I'll have more videos talking about mainly the West Pacific system as it goes throughout the course of this upcoming week. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.